Networking. That is such a weird concept. Like this idea that you're supposed to mingle and persuade people into being a part of your working professional like group. It felt like I'm convincing somebody to like me or give me something or do me a favor, even though I don't know them, they don't know me, I have nothing to offer this relationship. I'm not helpful here. So to give an idea of what networking is, according to Investopedia.com, networking is the exchange of information and ideas among people with a common profession or special interest, usually in an informal social setting. Networking often begins with a single point of common ground. So the idea is that you're supposed to walk into a conference room or a virtual room or any space where you're working and try to build a relationship off of that. So what would happen is I would end up at these conferences, watch a presentation, and then spend the rest of the time standing next to my colleagues going, wow, this is really uncomfortable. I don't know what do I talk about? Do I talk about my research? I don't think they can care. They probably didn't. I don't think I would care. And unless you have something to bring to the table, it just felt like I was bothering others. Like I was taking up their time that they could be commingling with their, previous colleagues or their friends or doing something meaningful compared to me sitting there with one glass of champagne going, I just want to go home. I'm really tired and this is really uncomfortable. So fast forward a couple years and are both within this region, the Midwest, all the way out to California, down south in the Southern Hemisphere. I've got a lot of social range now. And that's networking, isn't it? Then why don't I use the word network? Why don't I go into these conferences or conversations and say, oh, I'm networking. I'm networking with people. Or why don't I tell other people looking for work advice, job and career advice, to just network? Networking isn't this. It's not this exchange of information and ideas. That's not how I treat it. Because I figured out what I can provide going into any conversation. And two, I don't look at them as a transaction. They have nothing in common with me. Because at the end of the day, I want them to be my friend. And it doesn't mean you have to be like buddy pal. It's somebody who you can have a sit down with coffee. You say, let's keep in touch, and maybe you will down the road. And if you don't, it's no harsh feelings. That's what I mean. Like, I want to build acquaintanceships. I want to slowly build more firm friendships. That way, I don't look at them as a transaction, and they don't have to look at me as a transaction because I'm not trying to get anything from them. When I walk into their room or into the space, I am there to build an interpersonal relationship. And that is the difference on how networking works for me versus what I was taught to. I was taught to use it as a transactional service, and it didn't work for me because it's inauthentic. And trying to build meaningful relationships, you have to take all of the authenticity you can give and put it in there. You have to put it in between you and that person, because people can usually snake out fake people or that fake identity, that artificial interest. But networking is, to me, it's not this weird transaction where you know something and I know something, therefore we need to link up. I'm interested in what they do on the side. What do they do that makes them feel passion? Because a lot of people are working in a space that makes them happy, but it's not their passion. I'm talking like hobbies, interests, long-term goals, business ideas. Tell me about your education. And if that has nothing to do with what we have actually in common, that's fine, because I know I can walk away knowing more about this person. And instead of expecting them to give me something, I can expect our relationship to build. And that's what networking is. And here's a few tips on how I build those relationships. 1, pop in. Yeah, I am people out of the blue, especially recently. The last 2 years have been really, really tough. And sometimes just getting somebody to say, hey, how are you? out of the blue can feel really good. It means somebody thought of you. Haven't talked in a while, just wanted to say hi and see how you're doing. And if that's a 5-minute conversation over text or a lifelong friendship that sparks from that, at the very least, you let somebody know, I'm interested in talking to you. I think you are valuable and I want to hear your voice. So that's my first tip, is just reach out. I know a lot of people get really anxious about that idea, but at the very worst, somebody doesn't reply. That's like the worst of it. That's the worst possible thing that could happen, if somebody just doesn't reply. So you're thinking, okay, well, fine. Even if I decide to reach out, what the f do I even say? And that's the hardest part. And that's another thing that I recommend you gear up with. Ow. 2, have something to talk about. Walking in cold to any situation. Have a few things that you can default on that are something that you want to talk about. Usually my favorite are, how is work going? Sometimes I'll pull out a few random events that have been happening. So, did you see what happened in this space on the news? And that is always a way to spark up some type of conversation. Now, you're probably thinking you're not supposed to talk politics, money, or religion. I say no, fuck that. That's what people talk about. Just learn how to talk about it in a way that is kind and cohesive. And at the end of the day, my favorite thing to do in a conversation is just listen. People like talking about themselves. And when you ask them about themselves, you should just take a second and instead of trying to talk to respond or reply, talk with somebody to listen. When you want a genuine connection with somebody, you have to learn how to communicate. We are often so frequently distracted by lights, camera, sounds, phone, emails, text messages, or standing weird, do I look weird, am I talking weird, did I say something offensive? Stop. And this is going to take practice, and I still practice it every single day. Stop and listen. If you want somebody to remember you in the future, to build that network, to respond to that, hey, how are you doing message, so in the future they think about you during, a job opportunity or recommendation, make them feel heard. People want and need to be listened to. We're social beings, and most of us desperately want love and affection and interaction. We're such social beings. So giving somebody a chance to speak and be heard can change their day. It can change their week. It can change their self-perception. And it's not to give them feedback or even any type of, God forbid, any type of advice. Don't. Just listen. Just listen. Hell, if you're feeling really up to it, ask a question. Have a few quick questions in your back pocket, in your mental back pocket. It's usually a who, what, why. Why did that happen? Or what about this? Or can you tell me more about? And they get a chance to really dive in and they feel comfortable. They feel ready to interact at a deeper space when they're actually being listened to. So that's my top 3 ways of actually networking, is to build an interpersonal relationship. Stop using it as a transactional space and use it as a interpersonal building space. Tell me what you think below. What are your 3 favorite questions to ask somebody when you're walking into a social room or you want to strike up a conversation? I'm really planning to make this be a lot more frequent. Hopefully, I'm going to get my first 35 videos out the door within the next 3 months. Fingers crossed. And I look forward to talking to y'all later. Thank you so much. And again, remember to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for further notifications. Thanks. Bye.